While most chronic illnesses are long-lasting and may not have a cure, many can be effectively managed and even have some of their effects reversed through lifestyle changes. And today we are talking with Dr. Mel Hopper Koppelman about the chronic illness reversal blueprint, how to reverse chronic illness using a step-by-step process. And Mel is the program director at Synthesis Health Lab, helping people struggling with chronic illness achieve a 50% plus reduction in symptoms without relying on endless supplements or constant lab testing. And with 15 years of experience and two master's degrees, she combines Chinese medicine, functional medicine, and developmental neurology to transform how chronic illness is treated. And she works with individuals who have tried everything to heal, but still struggle with conditions like chronic fatigue, autoimmune, and fibromyalgia. So, Dr. Mal, welcome here today to the Green Living with Tea. I appreciate you coming on and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a subject I think about a lot, so it'll be great to have a nice conversation about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we got a little bit of your background, but I always like starting out with the long version of somebody's background, where you started, how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I entered the field of integrative medicine and Chinese medicine because of my own health challenges, which is a fairly common trajectory. I'd had pretty terrible digestion and other issues as a kid, but I was just sort of used to that. So, so that wasn't kind of here or there. But after college, I traveled to India, and I developed an infection called amoebic dysentery, and it wasn't treated properly. So I ended up having this infection for a couple of years, which was very challenging. And I was not able to find the support or treatment or, the outcome that I was looking for using industrial
Mm.
medicine. And so I'd always had an interest in medicine. My mom was a doctor. I'd actually thought I was going to be a doctor. And so I kind of had to figure it out. And so I tried a lot of different things and ended up finding Chinese medicine and acupuncture to be very helpful. Nutrition was sort of non-optional because, with dysentery, there was very little I could eat and still be able to function. And so I ended up going down this path, and it was very rewarding. And I quickly got into lab testing. And so I, enjoyed practice for quite a few years. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, my whole system crashed quite abruptly. And so I woke up and I had terrible, I mean, people call it brain fog. It was like, just I couldn't string two thoughts together. I had no short-term memory. And I had like body-wide pain, terrible stiffness, fatigue, just my body constantly just wanted to sit down. And because of my professional background, I was pretty confident that one way or another I was going to kind of figure this out or, die trying or whatever, whatever I was going to do. But because I was starting with this, I would call like a head start. It was helpful because I already knew that there were a lot of things within my control that I could manipulate and tweak and look for. But after a number of years, this was not really, it also wasn't leading to the outcome that I was desiring, which is to have really good health. I'm not old, and I wanted to be doing well. So
How
that
old
led
were
me
you
to.
when you went through all this? I'm sorry for interjecting
Yeah,
there.
sure. I mean, so that was, I was about, 35, 36,
Okay.
I think a bit young to need to sit down all the time,
Very much
um,
so.
right? So that's not what we're aiming for, and, now I'm 42 and now I have a lot better energy, a lot better brain function and a lot better
Mm.
memory. So I learned a lot in the process, but there were a few really important distinctions that I made to get better that I have now brought to my practice and why I have ended up specializing kind of in the most gnarliest of cases because it's really a different way of looking at it. Um, the first is that it's really important when you're healing complex problems, your body has a preferred order that it wants to go in. And so you can find really great tools and really great things to use. But if it's out of order, it might backfire. And the second
Interesting.
is really I had no training in neurology, and I really have come to look at the brain and the nervous system as the foundation of what's going on in the body. And it's when we take that lens even further to neurological development, then it's really the platform for adult health. And it may have been good enough for you, like in my case, my neurological development was good enough for me to be doing okay in my earlier years, in my teens and 20s and 30s. I traveled, I got married, I started a business, but it was not good enough for me to enjoy good, robust health into my old age, and this is something we're seeing more and more commonly. So having this lens to be able to assess it, to understand how the brain works. And I would say when I hear people talk about it, people tend to be either like kind of oversimplify it or overcomplicate it, and it needs to sort of be at a level where we can use it. And of course, the health of our environment absolutely goes into this thinking without a question. So it's something that I look at a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So the blueprint is important, and the step-by-step process is important by what steps you take. So you have a first principles framework. Why don't you explain that a little bit and how you approach the reversing of the chronic illness?
Yeah. So, with first principles, there's a few things that goes into that. I really honed my thinking around that through kind of restudying Chinese medicine. And maybe Chinese medicine sounds like a specific thing or a niche thing, but it's, really the ancient texts about 2,400 years old are really describing nature and almost the principles of physics. And it's kind of true whether you acknowledge it or not. So when we
Mhm.
talk about first principles, I'm talking about things like hot and cold, light and dark, damp and dry, which very much plays into the health of our environment as well. And so, lab testing is great. It's interesting. You can find things in it. But if we don't understand kind of more zoomed out about these more basic things that are giving rise to what we're finding on the labs, then we can kind of miss the forest for the trees. And so another part of first principles has to do with how complex systems work. So like you and I are each a complex system. And so all of us have heard of evolution, and this is part of that is an idea of increasing complexity. So we are made up of trillions of cells, and those individual cells are actually very similar to the ones that existed 3 billion years ago. So there's an increase in complexity where a living thing can go from a cell to like a you or a me, who can do our taxes or whatever these complex things we're doing. And so this is really important when we're talking about development, because with development we start off simpler, and then we become more complex. We take these really simple things that we can do, these little skills really, and then as our development unfolds, we are able to weave them into more complex, let's say, goals or acting on the world or acting our intention. But it's a lot more common than people realize, and especially nowadays, that does not unfold as it should. And so a lot of the problems that we have, we might have been able to compensate. But if those things aren't, those initial things didn't work well, then we're going to struggle to be able to do the more advanced things that we would like to do as adults, including have good energy.
So when somebody's listening here today and they have um, a chronic illness and they come to you, what are some of the first things that you do with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we use this five-stage process, which is about, moving in that this order that I mentioned, the order that the body prefers to heal in. So, and this is the immune system, which is really the outside of the body and is looking a lot at our interaction with our environment. One distinction is that we want to have all this toxic stuff out of our environment. And also because it's, modern times, we also want to have a fairly good tolerance to what we are exposed to, right? So that's addressed as well in stage one. Stage two, we're looking at digestion, and improving that, helping to get rid of, a lot of people have what I'll call like compost gut, which is just undigested stuff from years of not digesting optimally. Stage three is like a neuroendocrine balance, and stage four is tissue repair. So either head injuries, or scars or or injuries that have not healed well. And then stage 5, which many people don't need, is really boosting, which is where a lot of people start. So people start with supplementation, or they'll start with hormones. And we find that if we get rid of a lot of the things that people have that they don't need, that often things self-correct. But I want to be clear that this is not a protocol. So I'm not taking people through an identical treatment plan. This is really kind of it's more, the way I tend to explain it is like if you are renovating a house. Each house project is going to be different. Let's say it's dilapidated and there's mold and all sorts of different potential problems. Each project is going to be unique, but there is an order to go in. So if you have a leaky roof, then you're not going to start putting in new carpets. That just doesn't make sense. But you would start with the roof. And so if we kind of start with everyone with the roof and making sure the windows aren't broken, then the sort of what we need to do there depends on what's going on with you. And if you have a pristine roof, and perfect windows, then fantastic. We'll move, swiftly along. So that's a big part of it, because even if we just focus, here we focus on toxicology and environmental health, just that one area can be quickly overwhelming. There's an infinite number of things that we are potentially exposed to by existing routes, and if we don't have good frameworks for how to organize that information, then we quickly get stuck. So we just need ways of thinking about things that are reality-based and that are usable, to be able to make progress.
Great analogies. That was like fabulous just to picture it that way. And how you repair a home. I mean, it's the same thing. Your body is basically your home, and all of our bodies are not equal in our issues that we're dealing with. So, autoimmune illnesses, you deal with this all the time, I'm sure. There's so many of them. Can you give us an example of somebody that you treated, that how how you treated that person and then the outcome?
Sure. I mean, I have plenty of cases from my practice. I have my own autoimmune issues that I've reversed, and it really is following this approach. So one is that a big thing actually that's really helpful that most people don't realize is we often talk about the immune system in a way that's a little bit, again, maybe oversimplified. A lot of people, when it's, flu season, they want to boost their immune system, but then with autoimmunity, that maybe it's not such a good idea. And there's really a very helpful model comes from genetics and cellular biology, developed by a researcher, Bob Navio, who's also a doctor as well, called the cell danger response. And what he discovered, or kind of compiled, I would say, is that when a cell is triggered or stressed, pretty much by anything, so like whether that's a virus or an environmental toxin, or if you're part of a person in psychological stress, it goes through 3 steps in order to neutralize the threat and to heal. So the first step is what many people think of as an immune response, which is, putting its machinery to work to kill the virus or to bring blood flow to the area. Things get red, things get inflamed. Stage 2, you can think of as repairing the damage. So usually you might have, let's say, we call it like biomass replacement. So if your liver gets damaged, there's less liver there. So you kind of need to grow some more liver to get it back, And so that's stage 2. And stage 3 is reconnecting to the network and learning how to be a cell in your liver, in this body, in this place. And so we go through those steps. And so if we get stuck in any of these stages, then those are associated with different symptoms. So if we get stuck in with a lot of cell danger response 1 activity, then you get a lot of this hypersensitivity and like histamine type response. So a lot of hives, a lot of rashes, a lot of seasonal allergies. And then if we're stuck in stage 2, that's where a lot of autoimmunity lives, because that we're kind of producing too many antibodies, and we've lost this tolerance to self. It's either we've lost tolerance to self, or what happens if let's say your thyroid now has mercury attached to it, then it's not really purely thyroid anymore. And that's what the antibodies are responding to, And then stage 3 can also play a role because of this communication and connectivity. And actually, we can also talk about how neurological development, early childhood development can lead to autoimmunity. But essentially, we are going through these steps. So in step one, we are using tools to help, um, in many ways, it's like a water change, so getting a lot of the stagnant lymph out, helping support the liver, helping support the immune system without turning it up or turning it down, because really we're not that smart, and so helping clear hidden infections and latent pathogens, um, and just that will tend to help the immune system be more robust. And then in the next stage, once we have met certain criteria, people move on to stage two, where we're now more focused on getting kind of this gut rot out of the gut, and helping address dysbiosis, which is often there, pathogenic microbes, which are often there, and also helping with, again, oral tolerance, which is to say that a lot of people with autoimmune conditions will have a lot of food sensitivities. And we want to have a helpful frame where we want to first, relearn how to, like, what is food, what is real food, how to eat it, but then also, because when our immune system is dysregulated, we may not be able to tolerate foods that would otherwise be healthy. We need to retrain the immune system to calm down its response so that we can reintroduce foods that would be healthy. And then we go into neuroendocrine. So that can be a focus on sleep. That can be a focus on what we call autonomic balance, so our automatic nervous system and our stress response, which can also play a big role. And then, moving on again, it's a roadmap that I can guide people to individualize as their case may be. But in terms of results, I with lab testing, which is how you would diagnose an autoimmune condition, I don't really anymore require lab testing in order to help people through this process, but often people have these labs, and then we can just see before and after that their immune system comes into balance. And my own lab testing, for a variety of reasons, my labs have actually been the worst I've ever measured of all my patients, which is kind of interesting.
Well,
But I had antibodies to my own collagen, which I no longer do. I had the weirdest array of sensitivities to gluten and wheat. Like, it was sort of, it was a gluten sensitivity, it was a wheat allergy, it was all these different things, and that's actually completely gone now, even though I wasn't on a strict gluten and wheat free diet. So that's that role of oral tolerance. But this is something that's replicable, when we go through these steps.
this is all fascinating to me and for everybody listening. This is the voice, the information from an integrative uh, doctor, that this is how, if you don't understand how integrative medicine works, this is how it works. You have explained it explicitly and so wonderfully for my audience, because so many people are used to going to their doctors and getting medicine. And that is not helping many, many people. Nothing against doctors. Typically, and you could probably attest to this, are not trained in preventative or integrative medicine, unfortunately, because they're really trained to give out pharmaceutical drugs. And I loved your analogy of the house and repairing a house. You go to a doctor, they're going to give you medicine. It's like repairing your house. You have a leak in the ceiling, you're going to just put up new wall and you're not going to find out what's causing that leak. You're going to have the leak again. So I loved everything that you just told everybody. It's a lot of information, but it really gives a blueprint, as you use, take your word, to figuring out what is wrong with somebody when they're going through some chronic health issues and trying to heal those health issues, as opposed to giving them medicine to make the symptoms go away, but you're still going to have those problems and they're still going to cause you issues. So I just wanted to explain that, because I sat here with your house analogy thinking about it. It's, I love bringing it back to like very common visuals, like you initially said, for everybody, because it's very hard for people to understand. Even though it's very clear to me and you, it's hard for people to understand that, wait a second, I'm going to the doctor and that's not how I'm going to get fixed. I have to go another route. And I've talked to so many people. I mean, I have a friend right now going through some chronic health issues, and she was going the doctor route and all of the medication, and she is so sick of it. And she's finally going to an integrative holistic medicine, a doctor, and she's listening to my advice on certain things too, and she's starting to feel better. So it's just opening up your eyes to these other options that are out there. We love our doctors. Yes, they are a purpose in our medical community, but there's so much more out there, such as with Dr. Mel and all she has to offer. And I want you to go into a little bit of the uh, Chinese medicine as well, because that is part of your practice. I love Chinese medicine. Some people are not familiar with it. Some people might not uh, use it or appreciate it, but it has been around for hundreds of years. And I know from our entire family, we opt for that before anything else. And I just want you to explain it a little bit further.
Yeah, sure. It's always, I love talking about Chinese medicine, and it's always a little bit challenging because there's like a cultural barrier. Obviously, I'm
Right.
not Chinese, right? But it's a different kind of cultural barrier about what comes to mind for people or what they understand. And for me, the challenge is that, after doing a master's degree in nutrition and functional medicine, where I learned, the most advanced kind of lab-based supplementation and all the biochemical pathways that went with it, and spent a lot of time in PubMed trying to help people and optimize these pathways. I was looking at genetics and all of these things. I was convinced that I was going to be able to kind of reverse engineer these biochemical pathways. I mean, we produce over 20,000 proteins in our body, and then they come in different forms. We have like over 100,000 proteins, but we think that if we give the right form of B12, we're going to understand what we're doing. And so what I found is that by as you say, Chinese herbs and herbs in general have been used for a long time. In the case of Chinese medicine, it's over a few thousand years. And some skeptics argue that that does not necessarily mean it's efficacious, but it really, common sense tells you otherwise. There is a reason why it's been continued to be used, but not only that, it's allowed for billions of data points of reflection to be gathered so that people who study how to use it really know how to use these well. They know how to combine them. They know when to use it, when not to use it in combinations. And that's another unfortunate, I would say, weakness of functional medicine, not to criticize it in that field, because in many ways, functional medicine, which I think of primarily as lab-based supplementation, which is essentially what differentiates it. Um, it has a lot of strengths compared to industrial medicine, where it is looking for root causes, but it does not have a lineage of use where they really know that if we take these 7 supplements together, what that looks like. They're really very much in the early stages trying to figure out based on trial and error, which isn't bad in and of itself. But when you have 2,500 years of continued use, then you're looking at an approach to things that is just more mature and more sophisticated. And the other common misconception that I see is that, maybe people, they recognize that industrial medicine's, excellent and the best we have for emergency medicine, and that it really is very weak when it comes to chronic health recovery, that they don't have a model or tools to help you recover your health. It is the best they can do is symptom suppression, and that usually has downstream effects. And that's why people look elsewhere, as though then it becomes this sort of like idea of maybe, well, like natural is better in this kind of wishy-washy way. But I think what I would like people to realize is that there is an incredible evidence base for these herbs and this medicine. In many ways, if we look at the global population, more people in the world are using this than glutathione or vitamin C or milk thistle or these different things. So it's really this great opportunity we have, where we can share ideas and knowledge better to bring over these really wonderful tools to people who might not be aware of them, because the medical system certainly isn't aware of them. And then when it comes to looking at alternatives, there are a lot of wonderful people and practitioners and resources, but it's very like heterogeneous. It's very like kind of the landscape is very mixed in terms of the person's training or the person's experience or the person's quality. And that's true of medicine. That's really true of any field. But then it makes it a little bit tricky that if you go to a naturopath or an acupuncturist or a chiropractor, there's some really excellent ones. And then there's, kind of less aware ones. And you kind of need to navigate that too, that it's not black and white, just like everything else.
Yeah, just like every product that we buy on the market, you have to do your research, you have to read the labels, you have to figure out who you're going to. You can't just trust everything out there. Unfortunately, it's a wild world out there because you've got to, not everything is equal. And you've got to make sure whatever you're using, eating, and even what practitioner you decide to go to, that you make sure that it's somebody that is suitable for what you are trying to go to them for. I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
Yeah, sure. Because I want to do a little better job of answering your question though,
Thank you.
talking about Chinese medicine. I just wanted to give that background,
Yes.
But when but the perspective that the lens that this first principles lens that I'm talking about, in many ways, what was one thing that's wonderful is that it's something that anybody can learn to see themselves. So another analogy I often give is that if whenever I'm with an experienced, talented gardener, they go somewhere and they look at someone's yard, they immediately, just by looking, they have all kinds of information about what would grow there, what they would plant, what wouldn't do well, what drainage they would need to fix, where the light is. They are gathering just a ton of information based on their experience and their observation. And really, I feel that that anybody, whether you are healthy and want to stay that way, or if you have a chronic illness, we really want to develop that skill for our own bodies. And it's very possible when we use in industrial medicine, where we're using reductionism, when we're focusing on individual biochemistry, that is sort of the opposite, right? And really, even modern medicine itself, it used to have a much more robust bedside practice where doctors were doing exams on patients, doctors were asking questions, and they were looking. And it became, for a variety of reasons, they don't have enough time, and due to kind of fear of lawsuits, it's almost like they are against almost forming an opinion without some sort of really fancy test, that they don't look at you and even understand, what's going on there. But what we're talking about here, about learning how to observe, looking at your complexion, looking at your and smelling your poop, looking at your urine, understanding your menstrual cycles if you have them. If you have symptoms, when do you tend to get those symptoms? This is all based on circadian biology, right? It can sound sometimes it can sound quaint because it's from something ancient, but it's really matching up very nicely with what we are now understanding. So it's all about circadian biology. And we know now that when we look at epigenetics, which is how your genes interact with your environment, over half of them change on a 24-hour cycle. So it's not a small detail in terms of what you were doing throughout your day, the light you're exposed to during the day, the darkness you're exposed to at night, your movement patterns during the day, the restfulness at night. And then when it comes to applying these tools, we can use them very much like that gardener. Instead of focusing on an individual probiotic bacterial strain, which is just really in the weeds, we could zoom out and say, oh, you know what, this soil is swampy, we need to make it a little less swampy. And then we can use herbs like that. But the herbs themselves, I mean, as I continue to learn, I'm amazed by the sophistication. They can target individual organs, individual body systems. They have a directionality to them, so they can help things to move up or down as we need to. And what I love about my practice now is that I'm teaching people how to understand how they work for them, interpret their feedback so they know how to use them. They know how to use them with their family. So I take on the role of guide and consultant rather than expert. So it's really trying to teach health cultivation as a lifelong skill.
I love it. And you can just tell that you love to study and to help people understand how the body works because it's very complicated, as we all know. When when so many people are suffering from chronic illnesses or just even everyday life, they think that their symptoms are, they don't even know they don't feel well until they start feeling well. So, and the body has so many signals that it gives us. And how how do you help people understand that? And I know you use something called vagal paradox.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can definitely talk about the vagal paradox, which is another area.
Just curious about that.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to touch on that. I think, you know, the I guess one way I'd explain it, you know, to answer that question about how to help people understand when there's so many different signals is again that if we are using the right lens, the right map, then a lot of things that seem like unrelated details start to make more sense. So if we, you know, go back to our leaky roof, for example, in our house renovation project, you know, let's say you have a big hole in your roof, but you don't realize it. Well, there might be a bunch of things going on. So maybe there's, you know, water on your ceiling, and then maybe there's mold growing, and maybe your energy bill is like unexplicably high. And, you know, just there's all these different things that they don't seem, you don't know how they're related, but it turns out it's really just all explained by the hole in the roof, you know? And once you know that, you're like, oh, that, you know, that's obvious. And we, unfortunately, we're not kind of taught that these similar patterns in the body, but really we can look at things in this way. We can separate the body, you know, into upper, middle, and lower, which is anatomically accurate and really functionally accurate as well. And we go through and we understand what's supposed to be happening, what's supposed to be going on, and if we have a symptom, where might it be coming from, but also understanding that any symptom really can have a variety of causes. So in the case of the energy bill being too high, well, it could have been from a leaky roof, or it could have been from windows left open, or it could have been for a variety of other things. And that's why we need to be systematic in how we look for causes instead of pinning everything on the cause we've heard of, or the, you know, jumping to a conclusion, right? So we're going to look at the roof. If the roof is fine, then we need to look at the next thing. So that's where process
I don't know if you can hear me, but it froze.
makes it so it's not overwhelming. It's very practical, and it's really about taking, you know, because for clinicians, they have all of this theoretical knowledge. You know, we have to pass exams to become licensed, but at the end of the day, that's only as good as what happens for you, you know? And so if I can guide you to know what step to try things in, we're not going to make things worse. And then you get answers in real time about what your triggers are, how to reduce load on your own system, and you start to notice patterns. And so you learn for you, you know, what helps your energy and what makes it low.
So you work one-on-one with people, correct? And groups? Or
No,
just...
no, actually, these days, all of my work is for the most part online in my group at Synthesis Health Lab. It's been a really amazing transition. You know, I, like many people, thought that you really needed to be one-on-one to have I don't know, I guess that's just what we're used to, but what I found is that I'm actually able to give greater individual attention in the group, ironically. You know, if it's one-to-one, I find that first of all, I repeat myself a lot, but also, you know, the contact is not, you know, so immersive, and so people we're together, and we're learning, and then they go off back into their life. But in the group, you know, people ask a question and they're going to get a thorough and swift answer much faster than I can give it to them, you know, in a private practice. And if it's a certain type of question, it's really great. I might record a whole program update. But what I also found, and research shows this, is that people really do heal better in groups, whether you think you're an introvert or not. So people are learning from each other, they are supporting each other, they are finding that the stuff that they thought was weird really isn't that weird, which was one of the things that I would say was a professional frustration for me for a long time, is when I would speak to patients. And when you're a physician, it's a privileged role. People share things with you. But one of the things that pained me was that almost everyone thought their problems were weird. And I could tell you that none of their problems were weird. And there wasn't really a way for me to get that across just by telling them that their problems weren't weird. But when they're in this group, a lot of healing happens because, we have a culture where we prioritize privacy so much, and we don't realize that what we're missing in community and listening to each other, people hearing each other's stories, and they're like, oh, me too. And there's
Mhm.
something really fundamentally healing just in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So they don't feel so alone. I think a lot of people feel like they're the only ones this is happening to, and you can't explain it to people. I mean, it's, cancer, you see somebody has cancer and they go get treated, that's one thing. But an autoimmune illness, because my sister has one that she fights all the time and doing much better, but it's hard to explain everything that somebody's going through. So, and people can't they you look normal, So
Yeah,
I
I
love
tend
that.
to I tend to call these people, and I was definitely one of them for a long time, the walking wounded, like
Yeah, yeah,
if you have, we don't want serious problems, but sometimes if a problem is really visible and it's really obvious, there's a certain recognition for
hmm,
everyone and there's a certain frame for it. But if you're, in this kind of autoimmune or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue where you don't look unwell, and many people can sort of drag one leg in front of the other to continue doing what they need to do. Sometimes they can't, of course.
right.
Then it's really hard to explain. You're really in this no man's land where maybe you're not fully identified as having an illness, but you're not well either. And it can be very isolating. And so that's another thing I love about the format, because also there are people in the group who really are not well enough to interact with people in their own life,
Mm.
but they do have community in the group.
Yeah, that's great community. Do you do that on a Zoom, Mel?
No, we're in a group. It's all asynchronous, and so we're in a text chat, and so
Oh,
it's wonderful.
okay.
So it's I have people from currently between the ages of 18 and 80 in there.
Love it.
And then we've got, I've got the program material that's pre-recorded so you can watch it as many times as you need, which, most people coming in have brain fog and cognitive issues. And then, people ask a question and I, try to be as prompt as possible, but I can tell you it's much prompter than if you were booking in with an integrative physician.
For sure.
For the most part, unless you have a small question, you're going to wait until your appointment, which could be a while before you get your answer. So this is really nice, people supporting each other's wins. So it really is a really wonderful format.
So so somebody, you're on a group text chat. Is that what it is? Did you say?
It is, yeah.
First
Yeah,
time I
and
heard
so
that.
that's right. So it's a group text chat, and the way it works, because it's a different format, of course, and also because I'm selective in terms of making sure that the people coming into the community are, people are coming in with all sorts of issues, but as long as that they're positive and respectful and
Right.
considerate, and people that you want in, in a nice healing community. But people can apply for free and be guests in the group for free for a couple of weeks. They are in with members. They are
Mm,
seeing how I troubleshoot problems in real time. They can ask me any questions they have about their own case and challenges, and they get access to dozens of video lessons about these frameworks, about understanding how their body works and understanding why a lot of the things that they might have already tried, even though they were really smart and it came from an intelligent place, may not have worked for them the way they expected. So that way, if the format sounds weird, you can try it out before you
love that.
commit to a longer process.
Well, I love that. I mean, so somebody asks you a question on this group format, and then where do you answer it?
Yeah, so a variety of ways. So I'll answer it in the group. And
If
that's
it's
the thing,
short enough.
sometimes it's long, sometimes it's
Yeah.
short, sometimes it's long, but people, again, it's asynchronous. So you have time, and people can read all of the responses, they can read some of the responses. It's really there to support the people in the group,
Love
and
that.
some people are contributing a lot, some people are watching, and that's okay too, and they're learning. So we answer it in the group. Sometimes if it's a certain question that I see is kind of a like a really important question that they've asked, I might record it as one of those video lessons that people will then have access
Hmm.
to. So it becomes one of those materials. Or sometimes, I was getting a couple months ago, I was getting a lot of questions about the menopausal transition and about hormones and about all these different things. And my kind of situation was that I just didn't know the answers. I was like, this is an area that's really important to a lot of people. And I really don't know enough about it. And so I did a huge deep dive and ended up recording a 2 hour update for the program as a result of that study. And that was based on people's questions. And so that happens a lot as well.
Wow, I love that so much. That's awesome. And do you, when somebody joins, do you do an intake form? Do you have
Yeah.
to, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So when people apply to be a guest, there is a form. You want to be thorough in it, and it's fairly simple. Just getting a little bit of background, just to make sure that it's appropriate, good fit.
Mhm.
So something that I can work with, and then if you decide to commit to a longer term process, then there's a longer form, and that is more of a health history form. So that's where I get kind of all the background information, where I can see, to point you in the right direction. I guess going back to our metaphor, like, right, okay, how big is your house? What year was it built? We kind of get into that. So okay, well, this is where I'm going to suggest that you start. And then of course there's the guidance along the way. There's, kind of a lot of pre-recorded materials that are all searchable. And it's worked well. I think it's in its fourth year now, and I've had people from all over the world go through. It's really incredible. So that's an idea about how it works. But definitely, if you're interested and you're kind of ready to be more strategic and shift gears in terms of reverse engineering a recovery, then it is completely free to join as a guest and to apply at least.
I love it. I just love the format. I think that's just brilliant. So I congratulate you on that. Uh, and you've had 4 years of success and so much knowledge and education and background. So I love what you're doing, but let people know where they can find you.
Yes, so you can find about how to apply to the program at synthesishealth.co. So that's synthesishealth.co. And then I also have a website where I kind of write about different things that pop up, and that's essays.synthesishealth.co. And then I spend a variable amount of time on Instagram and Facebook trying to modulate that so that I'm connecting with people and educating people about where they might be able to find solutions, while also not spending too much time on those platforms and going outside, and being with my family and my dog.
Yes, and you also, I will also list, you're also on YouTube, I was going to say too, but
That's
I
right.
will also list all of these links on the show notes of this podcast so you can find it easily, and her website, of course, as well. And you should have all the other information there if you need anything further. Mel, did we miss anything? Anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think that's it. I think it's I'm just pleased to have the opportunity to get the message out that there's a lot of things that are considered to be chronic illness that really are improvable, if not reversible, and that it can take a little courage to even start thinking that, because we're told maybe that's not the case. But if that's resonating with you and you feel ready to try that idea on, then I'm really glad to have been able to connect you with these ideas, because that's it really can. There's a lot more that we can do to improve our quality of life.
Absolutely. And I love talking to people like you because there are solutions to help people with these issues and chronic problems that they're having in their health from whatever might be causing it. So I really appreciate you coming on today, Mel, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future. Keep doing what you're doing. We need more of you out there, but reach out to Mel if you want to do so. Again, look at the show notes, and any last words of advice?
No, but just yeah, have a great day.
Have a great day, and everybody, and namaste.